So we have today, Iván is joining B&B Executive Leadership. I'm proud that he's spending time with us. Iván and I, we had a long-term relationship. The two of us, we studied the same school in Jesuitas in Spain. And the two of us, we had international careers. Right now, he's the CEO at Zimmer Biomet, one of the Fortune 500 companies. He started in Zimmer 6 years ago, and since then, he has been promoted twice until being appointed the CEO of Zimmer in August 2023. Iván is going to share with us basically what it is to be a CEO, not only about his day-to-day job, but about his lifelong learning, about international careers, about spending time with your loved ones. Because I would assume that as a CEO, you don't have as many time as other professionals. So welcome, Iván. It's a pleasure to have you, and hopefully we can learn a lot from you.
Great to be here. I'm a huge fan of what you do, and I'm very, very proud of having somebody like you doing the great things you're doing, not just in Spain, but here in the US. So big fan of B&B.
Thank you so much. So, Iván, my first question to you is, you've been living, if I'm right, in 7 different countries, in EMEA, APAC, and Americas. You have a hell of an international career. I would just want to understand how an international career has impacted in your life, and how an international career can impact to others, right? Having that mobility and knowing that many cultures. It would be great to share your experience.
Great question, Javier. So just as a way of background here, I was born in Madrid. That's where the funny accent comes from, Madrid, Spain. And I was educated between Europe, as you alluded to, and here in the US. So undergrad, grad, and postgrad here in the United States. I've lived and worked in 4 continents. Last time I checked, I've traveled north of 90 countries for work and personal reasons. And I've directly run here at Zimmer Biomet, obviously, but before, when I was with Johnson & Johnson, my time over at Covidien, Medtronic, and other companies, I've directly run all core regions of the world. So EMEA, Asia Pacific, the Americas. And when I say directly, I'm talking about being in the region, not just doing Zoom calls or traveling every once in a while to spend a couple of days there and then going back home. I've actually become one of the locals living in the region. Today, no longer do I run a global Fortune 400 company, Zimmer Biomet. I also sit on the board of Panasonic, the iconic Japanese company. So being a global leader, being a global citizen is part of who I am. To answer your question, I really cannot think of any developmental or formative experience in my life that has shaped me as a leader and as a person the way that these global experiences have. It enhances who you are. It enables you to enhance your EQ. It allows you to think critically in a totally different dimension. I find myself every day solving problems based on experiences that I've had when I was living in some of these continents or in some of these countries. Business is global. I don't need to tell you that. You run a global firm, and no CEO, no leader, no problem solver today can afford not to have deep global experience. As a matter of fact, I give this advice to younger talent all the time. Just move somewhere. Do it early in your career, while you don't have kids, while you're not married, perhaps, but move somewhere and do something else. Even if the pay is not great, whatever, do not spend your entire life in one country, listening to the same people, learning one perspective, learning one culture. If you do that, you're going to end up living at 2% of your overall life potential. So that's my advice to others. That's actually the advice to my own family. My kids were born in Miami. They were educated between Spain and England. Now they go to school here in New York City. My wife is from Venezuela, grew up in Seattle. We have several different passports here at home. And again, I love the fact that we're raising our kids with this global mindset, which again is transformational. And it's probably the one thing that I believe has enabled me to become CEO of a Fortune 400 company, Fortune 500 company. 400 in medtech.
Mm-hmm. I would assume that this has been part of your lifelong learning, living in different countries, learning from different regions, from different cultures, understanding the difference between the Europeans, the Americans, the Asians. But then you as a CEO, you've been very deep into invest in learning. You are an alumni at Wharton and Harvard Business School. And now you run a multi-billion-dollar company. So you need to stay up to date. How someone who spends more than 250 days out of home can actually invest time in learning, right? And keep on developing himself.
Sure.
How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, I would probably say is the opposite, right? How can you not invest time in learning, right? You stop learning, you stop living. I, uh, I do it via discipline, right? The same way as I think about going to work or working out, exercising. I put it in my calendar. I block Fridays. Today is Friday here, and yeah, I block my time. I block 3 hours to do learning, and that may be talking to one of my mentors, talking to someone in a different industry. It may be reading, or it may be in a couple of weeks spending 3 days going to an executive learning program, spending time in some of the networking societies that I'm a member of. So you can't afford not to learn. So block it in your calendar, block time to think, block time to speak to mentors. Executive education is great. I do a lot of that. But some of the best learning I've gone through in my life is just having conversations with people like you. You are an executive who deals with several industries. I've spent my entire career, 29 years, just in medtech healthcare. Sometimes problems that we have here are problems that have been solved in some other area, consumer, technology, you name it. So having conversations with people like you is just a great way to learn. So that's how I do it, through discipline.
You actually brought up the role of a mentor. I would assume that there might have been a lot of mentors that have impacted you in your management style. So I would like to understand, how would you define your management style and how it has developed throughout the years? Because I would assume that Ivan 10 years ago, it's different Ivan in the way of managing people. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Ivan of 10 years ago, if you ask my wife, is different than the Ivan from today. But yeah, work-wise, yeah, you evolve, right? I don't think that you really do change who you are. But I would say my management style has shifted or evolved over the years. I'll start by saying that it's moved from being a manager to a leader. I know that sounds cliche, but the younger Ivan was more of a manager, controlling performance. The older, more mature Ivan is more of a leader, inspiring performance. I've moved from thinking about profits or starting with profits to thinking about purpose. What is that we get to do each and every day? When you are in healthcare, purpose is at the epicenter of everything that we do. We impact lives. So as a leader, I always start with purpose and vision. What is that my colleagues and I get to do every day here at Zimmer Biomet? We alleviate pain and we improve the quality of life for people around the world. So the older Ivan is more purpose-centric. It works better through others. Is more of a listener than a talker, or I try to be more of a listener than a talker. All of that said, the younger Ivan is still very present. I manage by presence. I lead by example. I like to be in front of customers. I like to be in front of employees. You mentioned this earlier. I do travel north of 250 days per year. And I'm not going to stop doing that. I don't know how you build people, culture, capabilities without being present. So to that end, I have not changed. I'm still very involved. I do try to delegate. I do try to work through others, but I'm involved. I like to be in the conversation. I like to understand the business. I practice accountability. I am not going to hold others accountable to do things that I'm not willing to do. So again, a bit of an evolution from being a manager to a leader, but some of the DNA of my younger years, in terms of being involved, in terms of being present, is still very much present here today as the CEO of this company.
How do you adapt your management style depending on the region? Do you think that we need to adapt, depending if we are managing a region in APAC versus managing a region in America versus managing a region in Europe? How do you deal with managing so many different cultures with so many different influences? Obviously,
Yeah.
the same thing could have a completely different meaning depending where you were born, right? So how do you deal with that?
That's another great question, Javier. So look, I tell people that there is fundamentally three key competences that a great leader can have: IQ, EQ, and CQ, right? So IQ, a gift from God. You have it or you don't. Intelligence. If you have it, phenomenal. EQ, for the most part, literature shows that you have it, but you can develop it. Emotional intelligence. The third one, CQ, cultural intelligence, you get it by doing what I've done, living and working like you have in multiple regions. And it is that cultural intelligence that enables you to really understand social cues, understand different dynamics. You spot on. The way you interact with somebody in Shanghai is different than the way you interact with somebody in Nashville, Tennessee, or Los Angeles, California. And different conversations have different contexts. I think this is something that you learn if you have a high CQ, and you do not get a high CQ without living and working in the region. You get some of it by traveling, of course, but at some point you have to be present, you have to be in the place. Language obviously is part of it, but I would say without CQ, you are doom and gloom.
Something that it's really interesting to me is, in the past year, really, in the past 11 months, you moved from a COO role to a CEO role. Two roles seems to me that will definitely fill your day, but how your day-to-day job has shifted or has changed from being a COO to becoming the CEO. What are the main differences that you would see in this transition? That at the end of the day, this is part of the succession planning. There's a lot of people that gets into the CEO level from operation. How your day-to-day job has changed in this transition?
Listen. I'll tell you humbly, I'm still adapting or adjusting to the CEO role. 10 months as the CEO of Zimmer Biomet. As the CEO, you're an operator. As the CEO, 80% of your time is being spent in operating the company and really thinking of the day-to-day, and every once in a while elevating your head to think about the strategy and whatnot. As the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, I think it's the 40-40-20 rule. 40% of your time spent on strategy, 40% on people and purpose, and 20% something else. And that may be investor relations, that may be external issues, understanding geopolitical challenges, networking, whatever it may be. But it's a totally different job. To begin with, once you become CEO, it's a far more lonely job. One day you become CEO, yesterday you were CEO, and then you feel like no longer people are telling you things as they are. No longer you're having the conversation we're having yesterday. People want to tell you everything is great. So it's a different role. But it's an adjustment that I'm still trying to make. It's an adjustment that it'll take some time for me to make. Part of my experience as CEO is still very present as CEO, but it's a totally different role. And again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, Javier, as the CEO, you definitely need to spend far more time inspiring performance versus managing performance.
We already addressed the importance of having a good succession planning. That's what happened to you. And I'm sure that that's something that you have in mind. How do you integrate succession planning, the next Ivan, right, in your current job? What is your, how do you manage to see who would be the next Ivan and when the next Ivan will take place?
Yeah, it's a critical initiative. It's mission critical. It's probably the first conversation I had with the board of directors upon becoming CEO. So here I am, I'm getting announced, and immediately is what's next? Who's going to be the next CEO? So all of us CEOs, all of us in different executive roles need to always think succession planning. We go about it in a very structured way, but also in an informal way. Structurally, obviously, we spend ample time with the chief human resources officer of the company. We have a great one here at Zimmer Biomet. In a very structured way, we look at all layers of the company, who's got the potential to go 2, 3, 5 levels above. Spend a lot of time twice a year going through my direct reports. So there is a formality, there is a structure into that. On the informal side, going back to networking, going back to how I spend time, there are networking forums. I'm always looking at, who could come to Zimmer Biomet, who's got the capabilities, the character, the competences, the commitment to potentially join Zimmer Biomet and run to become CEO. It's a conversation that we have with the board. It's a conversation that I have with the CHRO. And candidly, it's a conversation that I have with myself. I look at what is this company today, 2024? Where will this company be in 2030? What are the capabilities that we need today, that I need to have today? What are the capabilities that we need to have in 2030? And what talent do we have that can potentially lead the organization today versus 2030? So mission critical for any organization. I tell people that we don't own the company. We just lead the company in the present, and we always have to think about who's going to lead it in the future.
And there's this balance, right? Whether your succession would be internally or externally, right? How do you make that decision? How do you balance, the cultural capabilities, the know-how, the understanding of the existing company versus someone who comes from out of the company, most likely within the industry, but who doesn't know as much as this internal person about the company? What is your thinking about that?
Yeah. Obviously, the preference is to nurture internal talent. So the preference is that my successor will be somebody internal, just like I was an internal candidate for the role. But you also have to be honest and realize that maybe there are external candidates that are better prepared. Going back to formality, we do it using firms like yours, B&B. We partner with experts that come in and do assessments in terms of what is the job requirement today, what is the job requirement 5-6 years from today, what are the capabilities that we have here today internally, and do we believe that we have the raw material, so to speak, to develop the next generation of leaders. So spend, as I mentioned earlier, ample time doing that. Preference to do it external, but as I tell my team, the data will set you free. Let's validate what we have. Let's leverage people that do this for a living, and then do the proper assessments to understand, is it internal or external?
Succession planning comes within your legacy in the company. It's part of, you're going to groom someone and whether it comes from the outside or from within to be the next Ivan. But when it comes to your legacy, what type of legacy you want to leave at Zimmer Biomet? How do you want to be remembered over the years for your tenure as a CEO?
Yeah. Look, before I give you a lengthy corporate speech, which we CEOs tend to do often, I'll answer very succinctly. I want people to remember Ivan as an authentic leader who did great things for patients and for employees, right? It inspires me, it excites me to think that people one day will say, hey, you know what? He was a decent human being. He was a great father, a great husband, a great leader, a great employee. He helped others. He helped all key stakeholders of the company, but always prioritize patients and customers. That's the short answer to your question. In a more corporate answer, I will tell you, I would like to be known as someone who transformed the company strategically and operationally. A leader who moved Zimmer Biomet from being a product company to being a solutions company. Someone who diversified the organization from being heavily invested in one or two segments to being diversified. So that's the strategic transformation. And then operationally, someone who moved Zimmer Biomet from being a company, $8 billion in revenue today, to twice that amount, twice the revenue, driving earnings per share at a faster clip, and delivering meaningful free cash flow conversion rates and free cash flow performance. If you need to pick one of the two answers, go with the first one.
Mm-hmm. You already brought up how important it is, Ivan, as a person, as a human being, right? When it comes to your loved ones, when it comes to your friends from Jesuitas in Madrid, from other places that you've been, how do you manage as a CEO who is traveling worldwide to find time for your loved ones, for your family, for your friends? How do you do that?
Yeah. I'm going to give you probably a similar answer to earlier when you asked me about lifelong learning. It comes with discipline. There's a lot of things I don't do well, but there's one thing that I have as a key talent, if you will, as a key competency, and that's discipline. I structure my days very well from early in the morning. I do not waste time on things that I don't need to waste time on. You won't find me behind a computer sending random emails left and right. I don't attend meetings that I don't have to. I am very, very structured. I'm very, very disciplined. And that level of discipline, I bring it to my personal life, in terms of exercising, in terms of my faith, and in terms of spending time with family and friends. Every Friday night, 20 years later, I still go out with my wife. I won't travel on a Friday night unless absolutely I need to, and rarely you do. Every Saturday, you'll see me trying to teach my 6-year-old how to play soccer in Central Park, New York City. Every Sunday, you'll find me in church with my family. I travel often, but I try not to travel on a Sunday night. And I put those parameters. You don't need to be every single hour of your day thinking and working. As a matter of fact, it's counterproductive. You need time to charge your batteries. You need time to think beyond the business that you run. And without having discipline, you're not going to be able to have that work and life balance. The same applies to friends, quality versus quantity. I know a lot of people have very few friends, but those very few friends, I do pick up the phone and call them. I do see them when I have the chance to see them. So discipline and structure in your professional life, discipline and structure in your personal life.
The last question, I would love if you can provide, some tips or recommendations for those future leaders that currently they are just studying. They're studying in the country they were born, or maybe they were somewhere else. Now we have AI all over the world. The job market is changing. The job market will be impacted by AI, and things are going to change. There's some uncertainty about the future of the jobs, right? What would you recommend to someone who's studying right now, or he's looking to study something after 18 years old? What would you recommend to them, right, in order to become the next leader in the future, in 20 years, 30 years from now?
Yeah, that's another great question, Javier. I'll start with find your purpose. Find your passion, find your purpose. If you, an 18-year-old, 20-year-old, at some point want to be the CEO of a company, you're going to have to spend a lot of hours doing something. It better be something that you like. Throughout my career, I found myself at times not being purpose-centric, not enjoying what I was doing. I left. But overall, almost 30 years doing this, I've always been enamored with the idea of healthcare. The fact that I get to make a living, a very decent living, by helping others. My purpose is to help others, patients, customers. That is my purpose. I run into my purpose by serendipity. Others found it earlier in their lifetime. Advice number one is find your purpose. Advice number two is get a good mentor and get a great sponsor. A mentor will show you the way. A sponsor will clear the way for you. Constantly network with different mentors that will teach you how to do things. They may teach you about the power of AI you were talking about. They may teach you how to run a factory, which I had to do early in my career. They may teach you how to do a strategy the right way. They may teach you whatever. Have a great mentor that shows you the way, but also have a great sponsor that clears the way for you. You do need to have both mentors and sponsors. I benefit from both. Sponsors in my career that at some point say, hey, look, this guy may not be someone who behaves like us. This guy has certainly some flaws, but let's give Ivan a chance. Let's put him in charge of global marketing for Johnson & Johnson, or let's send him over to this country or to this region to see if he can turn around that. So you need to have that. But again, to a younger 18, 20-year-old, if I were to leave you with one thing, make sure whatever you do it because it is your purpose. Not because it's financially rewarding, not because your dad tells you to do it, not because it's cool. Find something that you really, really are passionate about, because your life is going to go really, really quickly. And it's tragic to do something daily that you're not passionate about.
Ivan, it's been a great pleasure hosting you. B&B Executive Leadership is your home. I'm I'm actually very happy to have a Jesuita in the YouTube, in our YouTube corporate channel, and hopefully this is the first of many inspiring conversations, because you can impact in a lot of lives, and you can help people find their purpose. So thank you so much for being here with us. And hopefully this is just the first of many interesting conversations that we're having together.
I'm always around if you need me. Again, as I said at the very beginning, huge fan of you, Javier, and what you guys do at B&B. So keep winning, my friend, and thank you for your time today.